What if Order 66 caused Ahsoka to be sent back in time? Part 6. Instead of trying to get in front of the CIS fleet, Ahsoka planned to attack them from the rear, since they were behind them anyway. Even if the commander had heard the Republic fleet was gathering, they wouldn't know where or how large it was. As the fleet moved into position, they continued to take the inhibitor ships out of as many clones as possible, as well as blocking all communication to the outside, with the flagship as the exception, not wanting to risk on triggering the inhibitor chip in any clone. As the battle grew nearer, Ahsoka's worry of who was commanding the CIS's fleet grew nearer. The CIS previously had some formidable admirals and generals, but she was confident against most of them. The ones she most feared, though, were Admiral Trench and General Grievous. She doubted Grievous was in command. They had previously kept them a secret for as long as possible, though that might have changed in the urgency of the situation. Admiral Trench, on the other hand, worked for the CIS since the beginning. In the end, it didn't matter who it was. Ahsoka was determined to stop the CIS advance and destroy this fleet. This was the action she had been waiting for, the way to fight back against the Sith. The latest report they had received was that the CIS fleet was above the planet Chaza, so Ahsoka positioned the Republic fleet to jump away and ready it for battle. Once ready, not allowing a moment of hesitation, Ahsoka ordered that they jump into Chaza. As soon as they exited hyperspace, the CIS fleet loomed ahead of them, and the massive battle began. She had wanted to cause much damage before the CIS fleet could reposition to face them, and was incredibly daring in her attack. It seemed to pay off, as several CIS ships were quickly knocked out before they could respond. As battle waged, Ahsoka began to recognize the movements of the fleet and the attack and defense patterns. This didn't seem to be the work of an organic. This resembled the work of an early tactical droid, making her aggressiveness the right move. The early tactical droids had a tendency to underestimate their opponents. The bolder and more unorthodox and aggressive the attack, the lower the chance they could respond due to their system's inability to process what was happening. Using this and everything she had learned, she picked apart their formation, tearing apart their fleet piece by piece, struck deep into their formation. It helped that most of the CIS ships were converted cargo ships and not purpose-built warships, unlike the majority of the opposing Republic Navy. She targeted the few purpose-built warships with the bombers at her disposal, while she had the Republic capital ships focused on the converted cargo ships, not wanting to lose too many of them. The battle appeared to be slowly turning to a Republic victory, when a dark presence that she hadn't noticed before caught Ahsoka's attention. Count Dooku was here. She turned to Plo Koon and he seemed to have sensed it as well, meaning that Count Dooku had been hiding his presence. Moments after, a bridge officer reported a small ship leaving one of the Province-class dreadnoughts in the rear of the formation. Ahsoka knew without a doubt that was Count Dooku, and that he was fleeing, using the remnants of his fleet to cover his escape. She turned to Plo Koon again, but she didn't have to say anything. He told her to take a starfire and go, and he would send every Jedi that he could to follow her. He urged her not to do anything risky, and that he would meet up with her once he finished here. Ahsoka issued her last order, to destroy that Province-class dreadnought, now knowing that was where the tactical droid was, before she ran out of the bridge and to the hangar, where she jumped into the Plo Koon starfighter. She took off and flew at full speed through the battle that was still raging around her, though she caught a sight of the Province-class dreadnought exploding, which appeared to put the CIS fleet into confusion, and they began offering minimal resistance to their destruction. However, as Ahsoka got to the outside of the battle, she just caught a glimpse of the shuttle before it disappeared in hyperspace, taking Dooku's force presence with it. They nearly had him. No, she couldn't lose him like this. Desperate, Ahsoka reached out with force, reaching as far as she could. The CIS could build more ships and droids to replace those lost today. Capturing or killing Count Dooku would have made a real difference. This battle had the potential to be something greater. She couldn't let this opportunity pass. However, she felt nothing as, deep down, she knew she would. Defeated, she grabbed the controls to turn back to finish the battle. However, a prompting in the Force called out to Ahsoka. Without hesitation, Ahsoka blindly jumped into hyperspace. She came out over a moon that orbited a bluish looking planet that wasn't in the charts. The moon was brown with some green patches with no visible water, but covered in what had to be ice. There was also that distinctive force presence of Count Dooku coming from the moon. Ahsoka flew to it, landing a distance away from where she had felt Count Dooku. She set out a beacon to alert the others of her location before disabling her ship. Either this was a secret base, or, more likely, Dooku had crashed here, and, if he had crashed, she didn't want to use her ship to escape. She crept towards where she sensed him, happening upon a crashed shuttle on the way, its engines completely destroyed. He was definitely trapped. He had also set a beacon, which she disabled before continuing her search for him. He hadn't hidden his presence yet, but she doubted they hadn't noticed hers. He was luring her in, and she let him. Ahsoka found him waiting for her on a ridge that gave a good view of the moon they were on. She ignited her lightsabers as he turned towards her. Dooku commented that he had never seen or heard of white lightsabers. He had first noticed them on Kellex, and had looked into her as a result. However, besides the fact that she was a prodigy with a lightsaber and her above average force prowess, she was an incredibly mundane and typical Jedi. That wouldn't save her though, unless she was willing to join him. He didn't want an unknown variable, even if she was harmless, so she would either have to die at his hands or fall to the dark side and join him. Even though he was a bit on edge after Bulk disappeared, he would still give her a chance. He wouldn't even force her to bleed her kyber crystals, as color was already mesmerizing. Ahsoka ignored his offer, instead asking why he had left the Order and joined the Sith of everything he could do. Dooku smiled, telling her that Jedi were corrupt and complacent, ignoring the suffering of the weak and helping those in power. He had tried to convince them to change, but they had refused to listen, and his precious student had paid the price. The Jedi Order was doomed. There was an even better reason for her to join him. Ahsoka acknowledged that the Jedi Order needed change, but she had come to realize that that change would need to take time. It would need a generational shift, something she still didn't want to stick around for. However, if she had to choose, she would rather stay a Jedi than join the Sith. Dooku frowned at that, saying it was a shame and that he hoped she wouldn't hold it against him if he took her lightsabers with him. He promptly ignited his lightsaber and moved towards her, their blades quickly clashing. She knew that he was using Makashi, a form that picked apart other forms, so she couldn't be defensive or prolong the duel, so she went on the offensive. They pushed against each other, each pushing them being pushed. Ahsoka tried to move around him, but she was often caught and had to face him head on. She switched between forms, trying to find one that could work against him, even using a version of Form 5, but nothing seemed to be working. Dooku was slowly in the upper hand, beginning to take over the duel, while Ahsoka was only tiring. Engaging in another lightsaber lock, she realized she had been foolishly confronted by herself. Not even Anakin had been able to defeat him the many times he encountered him, not until the very end. Dooku pushed forward, slamming his ability repeatedly against hers, and her foot twisted as it found a hole in the ground. She fell but managed to roll away, his blade sinking into the ground where she had been. There was only one thing she had left to try. Gingerly standing, she got into the stance Bulk had drilled into her. When they locked blades again, Ahsoka reached for the fear, anger, despair, and frustration that had built up since Rex shot her. No, since the start of the awful war. She used it to fuel her as she pushed back against Dooku, the pain from her twisted ankle no longer bothering her, only giving her more strength. Dooku's eyes widened, a look of at first triumph, then horror as he buckled into her onslaught. She moved around him, slashing whenever an opportunity arose, and he frantically blocked her, but his body was soon covered in small burns with his clothes scorched. He retreated to the edge of the ridge, forcing her to come at him head on, but she didn't back down. As her blades locked again, Ahsoka felt the pain, anger, and some fear from Dooku. He was using the dark side to try to combat her, but strangely enough, it was instead fueling her, giving her more strength as she redirected it back at him. She locked blades with him, slowly crushing him under the strength that was now coursing through her. However, he wasn't beaten just yet. He used a burst of the Force to launch her back before sending lightning her way. She blocked it with her sabers, but her concentration was broken and he was quickly on her. When she moved to block his saber, he shot lightning again, catching her off guard and hitting her exposed right arm, sending her main saber flying. Dooku pushed the opening it created and slashed at her left arm. It only grazed her, but it had its intended effect as she lost grip on her shoto, and Dooku kicked it away. Her twisted foot buckled again, and now probably more injured than it had been with the acrobatics she had just been doing. Ahsoka fell to her knees as the exhaustion from the duel weighed on her. His experience was just too much. She couldn't help but chuckle. She had to face death on so many occasions that it was starting not to frighten her anymore. She didn't want to die now. She secretly wanted to live this life to the fullest, to be at peace, to at least be old enough to be considered an adult. But she couldn't say that she would change much. Dooku was stuck here, having at least been worn down by her, and Plo Koon was on his way. If her death could bring down at least one of the Sith, then she was fine with that. Dooku raised his lightsaber, placing both hands on it for the final swing. He told her that she had made a good attempt, but has shown them that she would have been too dangerous if they let her live to learn the dark arts. He would at least grant her a quick and painless death. As the swing came, Ahsoka felt a familiar hum of a kyber crystal, and she gave into it. She lurched backward as Dooku's swing was about to decapitate her, his blade coming close enough to burn her montral. She grabbed the unfamiliar lightsaber from her belt that she somehow felt intimately connected to. Igniting it, its bright white color illuminated Dooku's stunned face as she swung. She wasn't aiming to kill though, instead cutting off both of his hands that were still clutching his lightsaber from the swing they had put too much effort in. His scream echoed in the valley below as he dropped to his knees, holding the stumps of his arms close. It hurt seeing people in pain, and unfortunately Count Dooku was no different. After quickly gathering all the lightsabers and clipping to her belt, she knelt down in front of him, using some of the force-healing techniques she had learned for the clones, whom she had, at the time, believed she would command again. She eased Dooku's pain and tended to the burnt flesh. Ahsoka stayed there with him, even as the light faded. Neither of them spoke, but that didn't stop her mind from trying to plan her next move, as the adrenaline from the fight faded. Plo Koon's fighter could only hold one person, and though there might be some supplies in it, it was too far away from here. She didn't know if anything was in the shuttle Dooku crashed in, but from the state she saw it in, it wouldn't be in good shape. Neither of which were feasible to get to with a wounded person in tow, and she wasn't leaving him. More aside from the fact that he was also defenseless, she had fought so much and almost lost a life capturing him. Ahsoka wasn't about to risk it all being a waste by allowing him an opportunity to escape. Several hours passed before the noisy engines reached Ahsoka. The light had stabilized at twilight, and Dooku had since fallen into a fitful sleep, with Ahsoka herself fighting to keep awake. She stood, unclipping her own lightsabers and holding them ready in hand. She waited to ignite them for the same reason why she was holding them. Was it friend or foe? She didn't want to draw attention to her by igniting her lightsabers if it were the latter. Their strong white light could probably be seen from a large distance. Dooku could also have a beacon, and though she disabled it, someone could have gotten the signal beforehand, or they could have just used hers. Even with her wounds, exhaustion, and aching body, she continued to fight for the outcome she was so desperate to achieve. It took a little while longer before the engines got closer, and she readied herself. However, she found her body instinctively relaxing as she recognized the engine sound. It was one she had become familiar with during the war. Floodlights illuminated her as it rose past the ridge, and the distinctive shape of an LAAT was visible behind them. Ahsoka collapsed back to the ground as it landed by her, and Plo Koon came running out with several other Jedi clones following. More LAATs landed, and they lowered Dooku onto one after putting a force-rank collar on him. Ahsoka was then guided onto one and ferried to a vendor in orbit, where her wounds were treated before she quickly ate something, then collapsed into a bed arranged for her. They transported Dooku back to Coruscant after that, locking him up in the detention center with Bulk after the healers had treated him. He mostly cooperated when he saw Bulk, likely seeing little use in hiding anything since they already knew most of it. His testimony forced Senate to conclude their meeting, and the vote was overwhelmingly in favor of kicking Chancellor Palpatine from office. There was still no news about him though. Master Windu was still scouring the Undercity with his group in search of him. They found hideouts and labs, all reeking of the dark side, but had yet to get an active lead after Palpatine had killed the tail they attached to him. Ahsoka and the fleet didn't stay on Coruscant for long though, only long enough for her to heal and the fleet to be repaired. A new CIS fleet had started rampaging through the outskirts of the galaxy. This time, she was sure that this one was commanded by General Grievous. The fleet's actions fit his style perfectly. Again, Plo Koon gave command over the Republic fleet to her, but instead of seeking a decisive battle, she instead led squadrons of fighters and bombers in search of the CIS fleets. The fleet that Dooku had led didn't have a ship that she remembered so well, so she feared that General Grievous had it like he did before, the Malevolence. Its mega ion cannon could destroy the Republic fleet, so she wanted to destroy it as they had before. Ahsoka led dozens of attack runs on the CIS fleet, destroying at least one ship every time, until she confirmed that the Malevolence was in fact part of the fleet. Its position, however, was at the center of the fleet, thus preventing it from using its ion cannon without hitting friendly ships, though she wouldn't put it past Grievous to do this. Either way, she had learned what she needed and repaired the Republic fleet for battle. Starting off, she led half the Starfighters into an initial attack run on the CIS fleet, with several squadrons, including hers, going for the Malevolence, with the rest attacking targets of opportunity, focusing on purpose-built warships. The point of defense fire was formidable, but enough of the Y-Wings managed to get through. After they had successfully destroyed the Malevolence's mega ion cannon, Ahsoka sent the message, and the Republic fleet jumped in and joined the battle. Plo Koon was in command, but operating in accordance with the plan Ahsoka had come up with. With the wider CIS fleet engaged with the Republics, Ahsoka led another attack run on the Malevolence. If Grievous was leading this fleet, that would be his flagship, and if he was killed, not only would it save many lives in the long run, but the fleet would fall into chaos again, like the previous fleet had after the attack droid was taken out. She sent some Y-Wings to take out the engines and hangars, while she led the rest to attack the bridge. The majority of the rest of the CIS fleet was quickly routed, her relentless attacks the past few weeks having whittled it down and compromised its combat effectiveness. The Malevolence also began to crumble, as the Republic capital ships were able to begin targeting it as well. Ahsoka was scanning to make sure that no shuttles were somehow leaving the destroyed hangars, when it finally exploded, a terrific fireball engulfing it before all the oxygen was vented into space. The remaining CIS fleet was promptly dealt with, not sparing a single ship from destruction. The battle had lasted for hours, and everyone was exhausted, including Ahsoka, but she still looked at the losses, a habit she had picked up from before as Anakin's apprentice. The Starfighters had suffered heavy casualties, but thankfully, few cap ships were lost, though few of them escaped without damage. Most of the fleet went back to Quad to be repaired, though intelligence reports indicated that there would not be another battle as large or coordinated as the previous two, with the CIS Navy having been virtually gutted of ships. Even with this, the corporations that had funded and created the droid army had tried to take advantage of the chaos, and take as much as they could. Even though the CS had already suffered 2 major defeats, these corporations were still running around the Outer Rim without care, claiming innocence in the Senate. However, unknown to them, Count Dooku's testimony had not only incriminated Palpatine, but also most of the corporate factions. The Republic was already preparing itself to wage war against them, with a force made up of both regular soldiers, but primarily the clones. Though the clone army was at first deemed a Jedi army because it was ordered by Sifo-Dyas, the High Council officially gave it to the Republic, both to appease them but also because they still wanted nothing to do with the clones. Besides this preparation for war, and the limited expansions done by the corporate factions in the Outer Rim, things in the galaxy mostly returned to normal. The CS as an organization collapsed without Dooku, but there are still worlds that wanted to secede from the Republic. The Senate was trying to deal with these diplomatically, which most everyone was on board with. Bell Antilles was acting chancellor now, since he had been second in the vote that elected Palpatine. This was only until another vote could be taken, as the whole ordeal of kicking Palpatine out of office was rushed and chaotic. Still, no one wanted the Republic to be without a leader in such turbulent times. Senator Bell Organa took his place as Alderaan Senator, and Ahsoka was relieved to have a familiar face in the Senate, though it was unfortunate that they didn't know each other now. With her victories over the two fleets, but primarily because of her defeat and capture of Count Dooku, Ahsoka knew there was talk to make her a knight. She had little faith in this happening though, as there was more suspicion than anything. Most of the High Council and many others simply couldn't believe that she had defeated him, and to be honest, she couldn't either. She had never fought or even met him previously, so she had no experience to back on. Her victory had been entirely luck, and the fact that Dooku must have been underestimating her to the very end. Still, she was not yet 16 and was still unsure if she wanted to continue to be a Jedi. Ahsoka now had several people inside the Order that made her want to stay, but the Council was an even bigger mess and needed a change. It didn't matter much, as she figured that she could continue to pull off the decision to leave till she at least became an adult. Her life mostly went back to how it had been the past year, albeit with less action and more work. With Master Windu's brash actions, the Senate was now kicking the Jedi off Coruscant, claiming that they had too much power and did not want a repeat of Windu's actions. Ahsoka laughed when she heard this. The High Council had been making weak attempts to leave, but now the Senate was making it seem like it was their idea and forcing them to go. This would take years though, so both sides are still playing nice with each other. Plo Koon and Ahsoka are usually off Coruscant now anyway, wandering the galaxy to both possibly find a new place for the Jedi Temple, but also try to build friendly relations with worlds to create a better image of the Jedi. She didn't expect to hear anything from the Republic anymore, but a message soon reached them, and it was for Ahsoka. The High Command of the newly created Grand Army of the Republic had learned that she had been the one to lead the defeat of the two separate fleets, and wanted her to take command again. The Jedi had not become officers in the GR like they had previously, so she technically wasn't allowed to take command as she was a Jedi. However, the message stated that they had already gotten permission from the Chancellor for her to become a general, so they were waiting on her decision. Ahsoka suspected they hadn't talked to the Jedi High Council about it, but she didn't care. Even if they had told her not to, Ahsoka wanted to be with the clones. They had been her brothers before, and the Council couldn't say anything about the fear of them possibly betraying her because she had already been betrayed by them. She knew what it felt like, but she had forgiven them. She had forgiven Rex, someone who she wanted to see again. She told Plo Koon her decision, and he supported her, saying that he would conveniently forget to tell the Council and let them find out themselves when the time came. Plo Koon dropped her off at the Corellian War Academy, where she would meet the admirals and generals that she would be fighting with, some of whom she had even previously served alongside. The realization of the situation made her smile. Who knew that she was now the person that was going to fight in a war that she had no right fighting in?